Thanks for having me. I didn't have a slide put together, and then I heard that Ken Benson was the only other person that hadn't, so I threw something together. It looks somewhat narcissistic, but I assure you it's just to have a slide and say that he's the only one that did it. So 12 years ago, I was on top of the world. I mean, my social life was great. I had finished a couple degrees in biochemistry and molecular biology, signed on with an amazing little company that was sending me to Ireland on an expat. You know, I was fit, I was training, triathlete bound, and it was also at that time I really started to notice that I was breathless, and not when I was working out or really pushing. I was used to that, but day-to-day activities. And so I met with these doctors. I had really chalked it up to age. The doctor said, "Oh, sweetheart, look at you, you're just fine. It's exercise-induced asthma," and they gave me an inhaler, and they said, "Use this when you have an emergency." When you can't breathe, it seems like an emergency, but they hadn't necessarily defined it. So of course I wasn't using those probably appropriately. And it was one day, I was in a spin class, and I got off the bike, and I just was ready to collapse, and I blacked out. And that was it for me. I mean, Ken talks about his 10 years. I was in that afternoon, banging on doors, trying to figure out what was going on. And it was finally, after a couple doctors telling me the same thing, exercise-induced asthma, take these medications, that I went in and said, this is absolutely wrong. And I was given a pulmonary function test. And the second the technologist left the room, the doctor came in and said, look, you have COPD, you have the lungs of an 83-year-old. I was a 33-year-old triathlete at the point. She said, you need to stop smoking. I said, I don't smoke. And she kind of shrugged her shoulders, gave me months and months of prednisone, a ton more inhalers, and sent me out the door. And so I used these inhalers to the best of my knowledge, but it wasn't keeping me on the spin bike, and my workouts that usually gave me gains were giving me losses. I was just getting slower. And I'm rather competitive, so that didn't sit very well. And it was on kind of what had become a routine visit to these urgent cares out of, you know, panic from breathlessness in my daily life, driving to work, whatever. I went in, and all the same, you know, exercise-induced asthma, just slow down, remind yourself, take these inhalers. But on my way out that day, a physician's assistant actually pulled me aside, and she said, if you have a minute, I'd like to draw some blood. She goes, I want to rule out a very rare genetic condition. Sure you don't have it? And I said, sure. You know, what's one more needle stick? What's whatever? So she drew the blood, and I went to work. And I kid you not, within 3 or 4 hours, she called me. She said, I work in the lab, and it's really important that you come in tomorrow and talk to me about these results. And I don't know about you, but I didn't necessarily have a restful evening. It was a little bit daunting to hear that. And so I went in the next morning, and the conversation went like this. You have a genetic disease called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Your body is basically eating your own lungs. She goes, but, and I'm expecting something great, with treatment, we think we can get you a couple more years. And she said to me that she was going to put me in touch with a pulmonologist so he could weigh my options and go over them with me. And then she turned to me, meaning nothing harmful by it, I'm sure, and said, do you have any questions? Now I don't know if you picked up on it or not, but I'm a bit of a smart ass. And at that point, I'm thinking 2 years, I got 730 days. Do I have any questions? And I just said no. I don't. And the honest to God, I was scared as hell. But they were sending me out that door with little or no information. I did meet with a pulmonologist, and he was very excited to have me because he had only heard about Alpha-1 for 10 minutes in medical school, maybe 5, he wasn't sure. He loved my CT scan, basically put it up on his wall as art, but he didn't know how to treat me. So he did get me on augmentation therapy, where I replaced my protein, and he had that completely wrong too, as far as how often I was supposed to do it. And you know, it was fine with me because he couldn't answer any questions, and I didn't want to ask them. I had been shunned and kind of shamed, and I was in denial. I said, I'm going to go about my business. I'm going to live these 730 days. If they work this out, they're going to have to fix it and get in touch with me. And this disease, it's run its gamut on me. I mean, my spin shoes and my running shoes are certainly hung up. I have my bike on a trainer now and roll up a couple machines to pump in enough oxygen that I can pedal likely fast enough to barely keep me upright, but that's doubtful if I were to be outside. You know, I was oxygen free six years ago, and I have nights where I wake up now in a paralyzed state because a demon puppy of mine has chewed through my tubing or it's just fallen off. I give myself infusions every week, and the patients out here know that in every cubby, in every purse, in every pocket, we have inhalers that we have to keep track of. I mentioned my months and months of prednisone just because they wanted me out of the office. It's inflammatory, it's exercise-induced asthma. I gave myself shots every single day for 2 years to battle that osteoporosis that we think was related to the prednisone. I took a year off work, a job that I truly love, and because of this disease, and I went back about 6 months ago. And I'm a patient, but I'm also a professional. And I fear every day the stairs that separate me from my next meeting. Or I wonder if someone's going to talk to me on my way to that meeting, because I can talk clearly and I can walk, but I certainly can't do both. This disease, as much as you plan for it, it's variable in the way it hits you, and it's unpredictable. I know what oxygen I need when I go upstairs, which I try to avoid at all costs. And I went upstairs a couple weeks ago at work, and I had it all planned out. And I got to the top of the stairs, and it was cold, and it was windy, and my oxygen wasn't working. And I hit the ground on my way to a meeting, doubled over, trying to breathe, sitting there in my own urine, wondering who the hell is gonna walk by me now. And it's funny because you weigh the pros and cons of where you're gonna spend your energy every single day. And so I've worked with my doctors on what I can do with work. And still, although I was a hugely excelling professional, I'm limited by people trying to be good and help me out. But this disease is limiting enough. So to have that on top of it is super hurtful. I think the worst thing that you can experience is the impact that it has on your friends, your family, your loved ones. My niece, who's my favorite person in the world, I can still remember this. It was a few years ago, but tears in her eyes, because I was always a cool aunt, right? Let's go hiking, let's be outdoors, let's do this. And she came up and she asked me if I was going to die. And I assured her, so keep this in mind, because I made a promise to my niece, that I was with a ton of amazing people working very hard to make sure that that didn't happen. But I wake up every morning and I know for a fact that it's a gift. This last 9 or 10 years has all been extra credit. All been extra credit for me. And so, you know, I take that, and I'm thankful for what I have. I'm at my last stage of this disease. I've been listed for transplant for nearly 2 years now. It is the final option, and you're lucky to have it. So it's amazing what you become thankful for. And I've always really wanted knowledge about everything. And like I said, alpha for me and the COPD was so different. I didn't want to know. And I took off on that expat that I mentioned. And I was doing my therapy, but that was it. So I was in a small hospital in Ireland. And it's so lucky because it's there that my choice to manage this disease really changed. I went in, I had a bucket of medicine, and I told them I needed to get this in my body. And no one asked me what it was. No one asked me what I had. No one asked me why. They asked me if I was Roman Catholic. And once I told them no, they left for quite a while and came back and assured me that they had found some sucker of a chaplain that would give me my last rites. And then off I was, and I was infusing with no questions asked, until one day, this amazing doctor, although he was irritating to me that day, asked me what I was doing, and I told him, and this place blew up. There was so much experience with Alpha-1 and the research there. And their interest sparked mine. I mean, it got me back on board. And that's really good because I was coming real close to the end of that 2 years and I had no idea what was going to happen. So after that expat, I returned to the States and I met with doctors and I attended education days that the Alpha-1 Association put together. I put myself in touch with the best centers out there. And I drove folks crazy with questions. But I learned that with proper therapy, used correctly, with exercise, with great nutrition, with an amazing support group, that I could crush this 2 years, right? And I'm telling you, there's nothing more empowering than information. It takes so little to change a patient's perspective, and that changes their hope and their outcome with this disease. And man, I was hooked. There was nothing that I wasn't going to do for the Alpha-1 patients, for the COPD patients. These people were my motivation. They were my inspiration. They still are. And to think that, as Ken mentioned, we had 10% of these patients diagnosed. Out of these 100,000, we had so many fellow patients that were undiagnosed and suffering and without the resources that we needed to get them. And I knew right then, there's no way that I'm leaving this place without the awareness about this disease and how to best manage it. So and this sounds weird, I'm as grateful today as I was scared back there on my diagnosis, because this disease hasn't gotten the best of me. I think it's brought the best out. I've done fundraisers. I've done t-shirts, I've done wine tasting, I've done bike rides. I mean, shoot, I put together a cycling team that partnered with the American Lung Association, made them promise to give me half of everything I raised if I was a top fundraising team. They didn't think I'd do it. We did it 4 years in a row, and all that money went to research. Right? I started and I chair a disability group at work. I want to make sure that patients of all challenges are given the tools and the resources that they need so they can remain in the workforce, right? So they can spread the word and remain professional and be able to get the help that they need to do that. I sit on the board of the Alpha-1 Association, as was mentioned in my bio, and my reason for doing that is to make sure that we have the programs and we have the advocacy out there, so we're finding the patients, we're getting them educated, and we're empowering them to do the things they need to do to better their quality of life. And they're all different stages, and we have to incorporate that. But most importantly, I think for me, is that I try every single day to reach someone with COPD. I try every single day to educate people that have power and influence about COPD and Alpha-1, and let them know that we need that awareness, and let them know that we need access to care that's so vital to us. I mean, there's no media that's off limits for me, and it gets you results. You know, I've had patients and respiratory therapists and natural healers, people all over the world that want to know a little bit more about Alpha, that want to know a little bit more about COPD, because you mentioned the statistics along with your personal story, and they're earth-shattering to someone that's just reading the piece in the paper. And it amazes me every day, because the things that I am doing is so par for the course for patients that have the information and are allowed to take part in their own disease management. I mean, these are people that struggle through every day, and I'm not talking about not being able to do a spin class. I'm talking about being able to take a shower, being able to walk your dog, being able to get your groceries, do your dishes. I mean, it's amazing. And they take those challenges every single day and turn them into opportunities. Opportunities to create that awareness, opportunities to find the patients, opportunities to get out there and make sure that we're finding a cure and that we're preventing this disease for all the patients to come after us. So we've mentioned Miriam and Ken, how fortunate we are to have leadership in the Alpha-1 Foundation, the Alpha-1 Association, the COPD Foundation, Breathe California. You guys are sitting amongst organizations and amongst the patient population that is so once found ready to move on this thing. I mean, the Alpha-1 Foundation alone has funded $45 million worth of research. Much of that brought in by patients, a lot of it brought in by industry, because we've created these relationships. They know what we need. They see the personal side of it. I've seen unprecedented partnerships between competing pharmaceutical companies, between patients and doctors, public policy makers, the NIH, National Heart Lung Institute. It's amazing what you can do. And I think the most important thing to remember as we move forward today and really create a springboard for this advocacy that we want to create and get out there is that we're doing it in a way where there is no shame and there is no blame. There's only action. And quite frankly, there's no time to do anything else. It's been said repeatedly today that COPD is the third leading cause of death in the United States, and we don't even have all our patients diagnosed. I mean, it's ridiculous. So to empower these patients and to let them take part and be accountable for their disease management is second to none, because we will motivate and we will get things going. So I'm telling you, we're standing in line to participate in research. I've done it all. And we're standing in line to help with advocacy. So there's no time to wait like I was waiting. There's no one that's going to fix this for me. I have to get out there and beat the streets. So yeah, the disease is challenging, and it's not at all what I had pegged for my life, at all. But I stand here and I'm with so many people that I have huge respect for, because I know that we're going in the right direction, and we have to stay diligent, because we're going to hit roadblocks. We're going to be frustrated, and we're going to hit losses, but we can do this together, and it's a huge honor to be here today. So thank you very much.